Well, hey, everybody, how are you doing? This is Heidi St. John. Welcome to the Heidi St. John podcast. We are inching ever closer to Christmas. And today I'm going to focus on something that I think it's a topic we don't often cover here at the show, but this time of year, I always hear from people who are struggling with family relationships, and they're saying, hey, I'm actually not okay. I hate the holidays with extended family. It's stressful. I don't know how to handle it. And so I'm going to answer an anonymous question from a listener in Ohio and also bring a special guest on to address this topic. I think you guys are really going to love it. This is the Heidi St. John podcast. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Well, how are you guys doing? Boy, we are close. We are so close. Christmas is right around the corner. And I have had a lot of things to do at my house. I know you guys are really busy with all of your shopping and holiday gatherings and all the things. We had at my house, my husband and I did, just a couple of days ago, the staff from Firmly Planted Families, so the nonprofit organization, hosts the dinner. Jay and I try to do it at our house every year. And of course, this year we're in a brand new house. And we've never really done a lot of entertaining there. And so still trying to figure out, how many people can we fit? And we had about close to 50 people, many of them who are volunteers here and many of them who are on staff, either part-time or full-time at the nonprofit organization. And we got a chance to sing Christmas carols together. We got a chance to share a meal and just, break away from the work that God has asked us to do and just invest in the lives of people that are around us. And it was a wonderful evening. And when everyone kind of left that evening, Jay and I were sitting down on our couch, just kind of reminiscing over the evening. And he said something that was so encouraging to me. He said that the older that he gets, the more he realizes that the only things that are going to matter in this life as we get to the end of our lives are the relationships that we invested in and the people whose lives we touched and our walk with the Lord. Our culture, our world is so focused on money, so focused on gifts, so focused on, who has what and who's giving what and all the pressure. And every year we try to alleviate some of that pressure by maybe ratcheting back the gift giving. And like in our family, we've gone really to a name drawing system to sort of relieve everyone from feeling like they have to get a gift for everybody on their list or everybody in the family or whatever it is. Well, I just want to encourage you, because I know a lot of people who are listening to this just don't love Christmas. You don't love Christmas for one reason or another. Usually it has to do with relationships that have gone south that year, or maybe relationships that were never healthy to begin with. Oftentimes the holidays mean that people come to visit us that we only see once a year and we don't really feel any connection to them at all. Sometimes those relationships stem out of past broken relationships. Maybe it's a new marriage in the family or kids that come in because we've got, a new marriage, or a new cousin has come into the family. And so we're trying to fold these relationships in. And oftentimes we're bringing them in when everyone's busy and everyone's tired and there's tension and anxiety. And I got a letter from an anonymous listener in Ohio, and I want to read it to you because I get letters like this every year at this time of year. And I thought this one was very, very just right to the point. You guys know me. If you're going to say something to me, just right to the point. I really like that. And anonymous in Ohio, that's exactly what she did. She goes, and I'm assuming it's a girl, I don't know, but she says, hey, Heidi, I hate the holidays with our extended family. This is how she started. So if you guys, by the way, if you want to send a letter into me at Mailbox Monday, the way to do that is just to go to HeidiSt.John.com/Mailbox Monday. And I love this, short and sweet and to the point. Heidi, I hate holidays with our extended family. Our parents divorced in my adult years. So we call this gray divorce, and I'll get back to that in just a second. But all of our extended family live in town and all expect us to come to each of their gatherings. We wind up dreading it for weeks prior, miserable the day of from being fake and overextended. Is it horrible to say that we are staying home for Christmas? Is it wrong to do what we want to just with our own family? As the years go by, I hate the holidays more and more. We've tried doing just one family per day and having it last days by the time we visit all of them, but I just want to be done. So a couple of things come to mind, anonymous in Ohio. The first one is, I feel for you. I really do. divorce is just, unfortunately, the gift that keeps on giving. And every year I hear from moms and dads who are absolutely frustrated. The extended family thing is just a complete nightmare. And I understand it. And I have really, for the most part, I've got good relationships with my siblings, a good relationship with my mom. And still, as my family grows, we have 7 children. And as my family grows and they get married, and then we have grandchildren coming in. My daughter, Savannah, and her husband are expecting their baby, their 5th baby. Well, every year as the family grows, things get a little bit more complicated, right? A little bit more busy. We call this in ministry exponential growth. And that's what we want. We want our families to grow. And so you already have your family growing and you want to create traditions with your family. Now you add to that extended family. Maybe there's relationships that have been strained over the years, or maybe there's just a flat out relationship where there isn't one, or maybe there's flat out animosity. You add that to it and it becomes even harder. And I guess I would just want to say to you, first, you got to pray about it. But secondly, your allegiance is not to your extended family on Christmas Day. It is to your immediate family. And I think, even for us, I've been trying to think, how do I set my adult kids free to just do what they want to do on Christmas morning, and so they can get their own traditions solidified with their families. And yet I think there's all kinds of emotions involved in it, right? Because my husband and I, we loved having all of our kids at home, but now they've got families of their own. They've got in-laws, extended families on their side of the family. And I think a couple things come to mind immediately. First of all, I think I just want to release you. It's okay to want to stay home, especially given the circumstance that you have just described to me. You said you're miserable on the day of. You feel overextended, you're tired from faking it with all of your extended family. I think it's actually okay to say, you know what, you guys, we are really tired. We've had a very trying year, whatever it is. You don't even have to give an excuse if you don't want to, but just say, we're just going to do our own thing this year. We love you guys. And maybe you decide, you're going to send them a big plate of cookies or something. But I think it's okay to bow out of it. In my house this year, we're not doing anything with extended family for Christmas this year, partly because we're tired and we needed a break. But I just called my sisters, like, I super love you. We all talked about it, and everybody was happy for the break. Everyone is. And so it doesn't have to be, this, I don't like to be around you, this angsty thing. I would try to keep it away from that if I could. But you're going to discover as your family gets bigger that it gets a little bit more difficult. And maybe we need to start looking at times of the year when we're not so stressed with, holiday, Christmas parties and Christmas concerts and the kids' recitals and all the things that tend to pile up in December. Maybe we need to start looking at like April, and April becomes, family month. And that's the day that, we pick a day in the spring when we have everyone over for dinner and we get to know each other and we reconnect and all those things. Maybe we need to start looking outside of the month of December. But I just want to let you know that what you're going through, Anonymous in Ohio, is very, very common. And I'm going to be praying for you. And frankly, for all of you who write into me and say, boy, this time of year, it makes me sad. Some of you are grieving this time of year. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay. Some of you are struggling with illness this time of year, and the Christmas isn't what you hoped it would be or even thought that it would be. And God sees it. And He knows what you need. And I think oftentimes we need to just step back and do what's best for our families and our marriages at the time that we are in. And I think that's okay. I've actually invited my friend, Kent Darcie, to come on the show with me today. And we're going to talk about this really important question because Kent really does know what he's talking about. The last time I had Kent come on the show, we were talking about adult children of divorce. Of course, this is his ministry. It's his specialty. He deals with this all the time in his day-to-day life. And when I talked to him the last time, I was so encouraged. My sister, I think, told me that she listened to the podcast a couple times and it sounded like a therapy session because, of course, I come from a broken home, and there are some relationships in my own family that are estranged, some relationships that are very difficult. And so I understand what you guys are talking about. And I think the challenges of adults with divorced parents during the holidays are very, very common. And so I have invited Kent Darcie to come on the show with me today. You guys are going to really enjoy him. He is the founder of Adults with Divorced Parents Ministries, and he's going to join me, and we're going to continue this conversation. So Kent, welcome back to the show. Really good to see you.
It is great to be back.
So here we are at a fever pitch, heading toward Christmas. People out there trying to get their shopping done, and it's all of the pressure. I told my audience last week, this will be the first Christmas that I've had, my first Christmas married in 36 Christmases that I have not had a Christmas card ready in time for Christmas. And I finally was like, this year I was like, Uncle, Heidi's crying, Uncle, and I'm just doing a New Year's card.
Well, there you go.
I mean, I'm still going to get it out because I have so much joy in just communicating with people. I love people. I love to get cards in the mail. But I kind of had to remove that pressure from myself. I mean, something had to give, like a little teapot,
Yeah.
And after a while, something's got to give. And I think people, we face the challenges this time of year, right? Lots of things going on. But if you're facing relational challenges in your home, maybe your parents, maybe you come from a home where your parents are divorced, or you've even got siblings that are divorced, right? Yeah. That's hard too, because you're really good friends with your former brother-in-law, and now all of a sudden you're not going to see him at Christmas, or your sister has said, "Sorry, I'm if he's coming, I'm not coming."
Yep.
And you have all of these emotions kind of going through your head and in your heart. What are some of the challenges that adults are facing if their parents or their siblings or whatever are divorced? What are some things that are unique to the Christmas season that you hear over and over again?
Well, some of the things that are unique. One thing is that we tend to grieve at this time of year.
Boy, so true.
When I remember when I was working in retail, and back then, Christmas didn't start till after Halloween.
Right. We missed those days.
And now it starts in July.
Right.
But,
they weren't kidding when they said the Christmas in July sale. They meant
really.
Christmas is now happening in July. I mean, the Christmas shopping, right?
Yeah. Through December.
Right.
But back
Crazy.
then, around November 1-ish, they'd start playing the Christmas music. And I would start to get sad. And one of the things that I found with adults with divorced parents is they really grieve this time of year, but don't realize they are. There's just kind of this sadness that kind of comes across. One of the things that I wrote an article some years ago called I Hate Christmas. And it was amazing because when I talk with people, it is amazing how often when I say that, you get this look like I've been found out. And one of my challenges has been we want to move past hating the season of our Savior's birth. And part of that is dealing with the grieving, acknowledging that, you know what? This season is tough. I miss the Christmases past. I miss what used to be and not having my parents in one place. Another issue is anger. You mentioned all the stress and the stuff. Adults with divorced parents, the number one issue we deal with anyway is unresolved anger. We had anger in our childhood, never deal with it, and we drag it into our adulthood. Well, guess what? The pressures of this holiday puts anger on steroids. We're kind of nippy, we're kind of irritable, but we don't really know why. Another issue that comes up this time of year is what I call the loyalty challenge, which is true all the time, but it's particularly accentuated this time of year. And basically that is, who do you love most? Me or mom? Who do you love most? Me or dad? Who gets prime time on Christmas? Who gets prime time? And you end up in this in-between sort of ground where you don't know what to do, and you get angry, and it's a hassle. And if both of you have divorced parents, it's multiplied geometrically.
Which is so common.
Yes.
It is very, very common now.
And breakups and remarriages. And, my father remarried twice.
Yeah.
So you get this extended kind of family tree. But I found, and we'll mention it multiple times as we talk today, and that is probably the biggest single issue we face, is that we lose sight of what Christmas is all about.
Which is a problem anyway.
Yes, but it's accentuated when we've got all these other issues going on, and we've got multiple families to touch, and we don't. And this person doesn't get along with this. And like you said, well, if Dad's bringing his girlfriend, then I'm not coming. What do you mean you're not coming?
Right.
And it's just a mess.
And then there's the part of you that understands it. I mean, this was me at my wedding. The day I got married, my mom said, if your dad comes to your wedding, I'm not coming, and I'm not bringing your little sisters with me. And so then I was forced to choose between my mom and my dad, who was going to come to my wedding. And all of my little sisters were bridesmaids in my wedding and flower girls and all the things. And so, of course, I picked my mom, and I still think about that. I still think about it. It still grieves me, I think. And I love that you kind of opened up by saying it's actually okay to grieve. It's okay to look it in the eye and just go, well, that sucked.
Yeah, really.
It's okay.
Does.
And it still does. Yeah.
Every time you look at your wedding picture, the family picture, you're reminded. And I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that is so important, with my ministry, one of the things we stress is you're not alone. And one of the things we think is that, we hear, well, divorce is 50%. It's actually less than that. But we hear that all the time, but we don't understand divorce is like as individual as snowflakes.
Yeah.
When we go through it, we think we're the only ones that are weird or experiencing this craziness. And one of the things I learned early on when I was researching a lot of this at the beginning was that what I thought was, wow, Heidi had a really horrible experience. That must be the exception. No. Unfortunately, that is far more common in our environment than we like to admit. And that's something I want to just touch on real quick, because as we're talking about this topic, it's really important to understand with my ministry. Elizabeth Marquardt had a great quote about not bashing parents. And she wrote that this is not about bashing our parents or knocking people who are divorced. This is about trying to prevent another generation from blindly walking down the path of divorce and not understanding why. And I want to just make sure we all understand that this conversation is not about bashing our parents or beating up on divorced people. The position of the ministry is basically the divorce happened. What are the implications of the divorce? And how do we overcome that? And the only way we do that is by talking about it and normalizing it and making people realize that you're not alone. A lot of people are going through this, and there's a way out of this. But we can do that. The Bible says, honor your father and your mother. And we will have this conversation that'll be difficult at times, but without bashing divorced people. So if you're divorced out there, relax.
Yeah, relax, chill out. I think the last time you were here, you and I had this, extensive conversation about this topic, and one of my sisters happened to hear it. There are 6 of us, 6 sisters, and one of them heard it, and she was like, "Wow, Heidi, I had to play it again because it was like listening to a therapy session." Like we were all, she's like, "I could just tell that you were really processing through what Kent was saying." And I told her later, I said, honestly, I don't talk about it very much. I'm 54 years old. I don't talk about my parents' divorce very much anymore. It's always going to impact my life, and I think it will always make me sad.
Yes.
But I said, honestly, I just don't think about it very much. And so Kent was bringing up all these things. I was like, oh yeah. Oh, hey. Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that in a while. But as people who are listening to this are navigating, Christmas is just a few days away.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of them are just like, well, shoot, what are your, do you have any, like, just off the top of your head, you just go, here are some things that might make your life a little bit easier. Maybe a way to sort of, the first one I think is just acknowledging this actually really is hard.
Yes.
And the grieving is okay. It's okay to grieve it. It's okay to say, shoot, I wish it wasn't this way.
Yeah.
And then what are some practical things? I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
What are some practical things encouragement that you can offer for people who are sitting here listening to this right now, and they're on the verge of tears, and they just don't know that they can do this one more year, and they don't know how to navigate it, and they feel like no matter what they do, they're losing, right? It's just a losing proposition no matter what, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah. You mentioned a really important thing. Well, you mentioned a number of things that are important, but I want to kind of swing to the end of what you said, that you don't think about it, you don't talk about it. That is extremely common. I did a presentation at a college, and I did a Friday night and a Saturday night. And I think on Friday night, I had the brother, and he had said, you know what? After listening to you, I've never talked to my sister about it, ever. And the next morning, I had the sister at the workshop, and she said, you know what? The first time we ever talked about our parents' divorce was last night after your presentation.
Interesting.
We don't talk about it. The first time my sister and I talked about it was the first time I presented a workshop 20 years ago. And she happened to be in town at the time. And at the end, that was the first time we ever really talked about the divorce. And I encourage people that it's okay to talk about it. And it's normal. What's your experience? And one of the biggest things I find with people when I talk with them is they'll say, oh man, we had to do this and I couldn't do this. And my mom said this, my dad said that. And I just thought, whatever. And I just was so frustrated. And I went, well, yeah, that's normal. And they look at you like, really? And they go, yeah, that's
almost
normal.
with a thank you. Just
Right.
thank you for acknowledging that this is hard.
Yeah. But that's so important that it's normal and it's okay. So if you're sad and you're grieving, that's okay. If you're frustrated because you've got to go to this place and you got to go to this place and this person doesn't get along and this person doesn't get along, it's okay. But talk about it. And then later, we'll talk about getting some resources that can help you so that next year's holidays go better. Boundaries and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. If, you noted earlier that it matters, whether you were a child or whether you were grown when your parents divorced. I think it's interesting to me in my family. I was 18 when my parents divorced.
Okay.
But my youngest sister was 3. And
Okay.
we have very, very different
Yes.
perspectives. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, at your age, you'd be the college age, and there you have the shock factor of you thought you had something and it's gone. And basically that's called gray divorce, when parents wait until you're grown to divorce. And right now that is double digits. It's amazing how much gray divorce is there after 25, 35, 45,
Awful.
50
I just think that's
years.
so awful. You worked you
Yeah.
made it to 50 years and now you're going to
Yeah, you make it to the finish line and now you're back to
Yeah.
but that's another program. But
yeah.
yeah, that is just, but when that happens, and if you're walking into that this Christmas, or maybe you've had a couple of those under your belt, one of the complications when our parents divorce when we're older is that you already have history.
Yep.
You've already done a
have
bunch
traditions.
of Christmas. Exactly. You've already had Christmas with Uncle Joe and with that thing, and we always have the turkey, and we always, Dad always wears that dumb, sweater, and that's already in, and it's already hardwired into your kids. So after 15 years of all this and mom and dad divorce, you're stuck in this whole no man's land where you're trying to deal with the parents yourself, but you're also dealing with your kids. What do you mean we're not going to Grandpa and Grandma's house? Well, we got to go to Grandpa's house, and then later we'll go to Grandma's house, or the next day we'll go to Grandma's house. And you get caught in the middle. So it's very, very difficult. That's different than when you were a child when they grew up, that you have this history thing. And like I said, the other thing is you get caught between your parents and your kids. Very often your parents, and the loyalty challenge is on steroids when you have gray divorce.
Oh, yeah.
Because the basic attitude is you're old enough to understand why your dad's a deadbeat or why your mom is so horrible. You're old enough to understand that. And you mentioned that you have multiple, siblings. It is not uncommon that they will come down on different sides of the fence.
Yep.
So some are on this side, some are on that side.
Yes.
It's not even true by gender, really.
Nope.
It doesn't mean that the boys will always be with the dad. No. It's kind of how things are filtered. And all of that super complicates this time of year because everybody's going through the shock and the craziness of our parents aren't together anymore. We don't do it well because nobody's talking about this. And we go into Christmas just wanting it to be over because we don't know how to compensate and cope with it. And it also, if we're not careful, we talked about the importance of remembering the true meaning of Christmas. Divorce, particularly gray divorce, can distort our view of God. Because if you had two parents that were going to church and doing their thing and all sort of stuff, and suddenly it falls apart, Satan just kind of swoops in and goes, well, obviously that doesn't mean anything. Obviously that's not true. Because look at these people. They did this and they did that, and their marriage didn't make it. And it just obliterates the joy that the holiday should bring.
Yeah, I think that's true. One thing, I'd love to get your perspective or your opinion on this. One thing that my sisters and I ended up doing, and it it truly proved to be life-giving. And this was, years, maybe even a decade or so after my parents' divorce.
Yeah.
We kind of got together by accident. It came up. And one by one, we just, like out loud, we released the other one from feeling like they couldn't have their own feeling about it.
Yeah.
Like I remember just looking at my sister and saying, it's actually okay with me that you guys have a great relationship with Dad. It's okay. And I want that for you because you need it. Like that's what we all should have. And
Yes.
and she said to me, she goes, it's all right, Heidi. I understand why you don't have that relationship. And we just released each other
Yeah.
from feeling like we had to side with one of the other siblings, or it was so life-giving.
Yeah.
To be able to do that. Is that something that you recommend, or have you seen that happen before where it's been successful?
Oh, absolutely. We talked about talking about it,
Yeah.
even between siblings. You'd
Yeah.
be amazed. I mean, I've been doing this 20 plus years, and
Yeah.
you'd be amazed how few people actually talk about it, even within
Yeah.
siblings. I mean, I highly recommend. Now, it is important, again, I'm also a counselor. It is important that we have conversations that are emotionally safe. And the divorce thing is very emotionally charged. And particularly, even though the number one issue for divorce now, particularly gray divorce, is just we're tired of each other and we don't want to be married anymore. If you bring an affair into the thing or
Boy,
something
yeah.
really charged,
Yep.
it can get pretty tricky. And we want to make sure that there's some ground rules about the conversation, that in fact we can share. We're not going to yell. It's okay to have different opinions, and we're going to be okay. But even though our parents aren't together, we want to make sure that we keep our connections going because we don't want that breaking us.
Yeah. Yeah. And so often it does. And that's what's so sad. And I think, parents can sort of pit, they do this, right? Kids become a pawn in divorce.
Yeah.
And so easily it happens really quickly. But when you look at kind of the overarching impact that divorce has and the challenges that people are facing this time of year, and you want to say, here's some things you guys can do to sort of help overcome these challenges, maybe alleviate it, maybe make it not so hard. What kind of steps would you recommend for folks who are listening today who are just dreading the Christmas Eve service because afterward, one part of the family is going to go this way and another part of the family is going to go that way. What are some things that you would recommend to help navigate the next couple of days?
Right now, because we're pretty close to ground zero at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I know we got 4 days?
Yeah,
I
not
think,
a whole lot. Yeah,
not a lot.
Pretty close here. But the biggest issue, and I know I've said it before, but I can't underestimate it, is that right now you're not going to change a whole lot. We've got to talk about boundaries. We can't do boundaries out of anger or fear. We have to do boundaries out of love. And guess what? That's not going to happen until you work through this stuff and figure out what's going on. So boundaries are going to be a little bit tricky right now. What we can control is how we respond to everything. You're probably not going to be able to change who's coming Christmas Eve or who's doing whatever, but you can change how you respond to it. And one of the biggest things right now is acknowledging that not okay is okay. That's so important because we have this misnomer that we should be okay. It's just a bump on the road, and I shouldn't feel bad, and this shouldn't be, and it's a hassle. And you're not the only one. There's lots of people going through this. You're going to make it through it, but also bring the Lord into it. Pray about it. Lord, you know my heart. Nothing's hidden from you. So right now, I hate this. I can't wait for this to be over. I know I'm supposed to be happy and rejoicing and heaven sing, peace, heavenly peace and all that. But I don't feel any of that right now. So, you cast all our cares on the Lord.
Right.
And just go, Lord.
Feels like a platitude sometimes.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But it's important. And it's important right now, just a few days away from Christmas, to just give it to him. Acknowledge all the stuff. Man, I listened to this program and like this volcano of stuff just erupted in me. That's okay. But the key is when dad brings his girlfriend or mom, slams whatever, all this sort of jazz, or they fight over the thing, pray that the Lord will give you the peace to get through this season. And focus on the fact that guess what? This is going to be the last one that you process like this. because next year you're
We're
going
doing
to
it
get the
different.
resources and you're going to learn how the divorce impacted you.
Yeah.
You're going to learn how to overcome that. You're going to learn about boundaries, and you're going to approach birthdays, graduations, weddings, Thanksgiving, Christmas next year way different. And that is the hope that we can have even amidst the craziness of right now.
Now, I keep hearing you talk about boundaries. Why are they so important? There are some people that are listening to this who have figured this out, right? And they're starting to set up boundaries. I always feel like I need to say the caveat, I do think that the word boundary is being overused, in the culture now.
Yeah, like
It's
toxic
like,
and narcissistic, yeah.
right. I'm sort of over it. Like we're talking to people who need to create boundaries for legitimate reasons.
Yes.
Not people who are just like, we're going to throw the word boundary around because I'm selfish.
Right.
Right. We're not, because really that's what happens,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if I had a nickel for every person that has said that to me over the last year, or questions that are coming into the podcast, parents that have been really hurt by their adult children because the children are like, Mom and Dad, I need to put up this boundary. And the parents haven't really done anything wrong.
Yeah.
But there are circumstances, and this is absolutely one of them, when you're dealing with parents who've been divorced and they're bringing the new girlfriend or the new spouse or whatever it is around. Those boundaries are really important. Sometimes they're emotional boundaries. Sometimes they're actual physical boundaries.
Yes.
Like, here's what we're not going to do.
Right.
Why are they so important? And can you give us some examples?
Sure. They're important for our emotional health. That's just number one. When the Bible talks about leaving your father and mother and cleaving to your spouse, well, guess what? In divorce, there's still a lot of entanglements still going on, and we want to make sure that we leave and cleave, and it's awfully tough when we're not emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
And there are relationships at this time of year that just aren't emotionally healthy. Boundaries are, and again, you're right, the word is overused a ton.
Yeah.
But for us, I'll give you an example of a good boundary. Mom, Dad, you are absolutely not to badmouth one or the other in front of the kids, period. If you do it, you won't be invited next time.
Yep.
We are leaving the grandkids out of your mess.
Yep.
I mean, that was a boundary. My father remarried twice. And because it was almost 25 years,
Oh, that's awesome.
they were around for a long time. And there was a lot of overlap. And I can remember talking to my mom and saying, look, you are going to behave here. You are not going to badmouth my dad, with the kids here. And guess what? If that doesn't happen, then we're not going to invite you. You're going to have to come in later. One of the problems with divorce is that we feel that we don't have control. Because guess what? As kids, we don't.
Right.
Suddenly we've got a new school, or we can't be at the sports team because we're away for half the practices. Our friends are changing. Whole sides of the family have disappeared. We have no control. And we go into adulthood, and we tend to be control freaks because we want to have control. But then we hit Christmas, and we're like little kids again.
Yeah,
where we allow the parents to run the show. And no, I'm not coming if so-and-so. Well, guess what? Here's the boundary. We are doing Christmas one time. You're welcome to come. And if you don't come, oh well. And that's Christmas is a little trickier because you can do more than one Christmas and all that. But when you're doing birthday parties or graduation parties or all this, you don't need to do two of everything. Or birth announcements. Right. I've heard interesting things with birth announcements.
Yes.
Well, if she's going to be there, I'm not going to be there. Well, if she's going to be there with his girlfriend, I'm not going to be there. Well, guess what? We're going to be there. Anybody that wants to be there can be there, but we're not doing two.
Yeah.
And that's a boundary. But one of the problems is, particularly in Christian circles, is that we're all kind and wonderful, and boundaries are not very friendly, and boundaries aren't whatever. But yet the Bible, we see boundaries on like page 2. See that tree? Don't touch it. That's a boundary. and boundaries have consequences.
Yeah.
You touch that tree, you're done. And what do we see? Our loving God, our God who is love, put a boundary in. The kids, if you will, broke the boundary. And did he go, oh, well, you really didn't mean it, and I didn't, I don't know. No.
Nope.
He went, you're out of here.
Yeah.
That was the boundary, and you broke it. And unfortunately...
So you're saying, mean what you say what you mean, and follow through.
Well, yeah, you create the boundary in love, not fear or anger. You want to make sure that it's communicated. You want to make sure that's implemented. And then it's really important that it's enforced. And that is hard. Because if you're saying, you know what, Dad, if you attack his mom's boyfriend again, verbally in front of the kids, you can't come to the next family event. Now, you tell him that in advance, not in the thing. because he always does it, and I'm just picking on this particular scenario.
Right.
Well, guess what? What if the next event is a birthday? Enforcing it is really, you mean that you're not going to let me come to Joey's birthday? No, Dad, we told you that if you picked on John at the Christmas party, that you would not be allowed at the next event. You chose to break that boundary. Therefore, you've chosen not to attend Joey's birthday. Now, that's easy to say.
Boy, so hard to do.
But guess what? The next boundary you put in, they're probably going to follow. And the other thing is, and again, kind of back to what I said earlier about not bashing divorced parents. Divorced parents have gone through the most traumatic experience of their life, second only to the death of a spouse, as far as emotional pain.
Yep.
And a lot of them are confused and hurt and grasping for whatever they can grasp. And there isn't malice in most cases. In most cases, they just don't know, and they're not trying. So when you put boundaries into place, sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. So, yeah, I mean, the hardcore, you got to do boundaries. But in most cases, if you do the boundaries, the parents can behave for 3 hours. They can. But we have to put the boundary in place because we're the ones coming out of Christmas like this.
Right.
And, and that's not fair.
I wonder to speak to this for a second, because there are deal breakers, I think, in divorces where you're talking about one parent has, just severely abused the other one.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's say that I'm just an example, right? That the father has severely broken trust.
Oh, yeah.
And abused his former wife, whatever.
Right.
And the wife has rightly said, I actually can't be in the same room with him.
Yes.
I can't do it. Then what?
Yeah. You know what? I'm really glad you brought that up, because the other thing that I normally say about our ministry is we deal in the center of the bell curve. Everything we're saying in this broadcast is in the center. Some lean towards the craziness, some lean towards the goodness, but the bulk of them are kind of in the center. When you've got situations where they really are toxic, where there really is abuse, where there really is danger, we never put ourselves in harm's way.
Right.
That is never anything that we're saying. Don't interpret it that way, because occasionally I'll get contact and I'll go, well, what about abuse? We don't want to. No. We're never talking about that. That's not biblical.
That's
to put yourself in harm's way. So
absolutely.
absolutely.
Or your mother.
Yeah, or your kids, or
your
whoever.
Kids. Yeah.
Sometimes, and that includes, substance abuse.
100%.
There's a lot of things where very hard boundaries need to be put in. But the bulk of what we're talking about, the bulk of the divorces, the bulk of what we're dealing with is not that.
And
now, what does
sad?
creep in is
I just think that's
affairs.
so sad.
Affairs get interesting.
Yes.
And we're not going to park here, but what do you do when he marries the person? And that happens. But that's another, like we're dealing today with the bulk of the things that, they didn't get along, whatever happened and that sort of stuff. And they don't get along now. Now you have new people and nobody likes each other, and they'll grit their teeth, but they'll behave for 2 or 3 hours. So absolutely don't put yourself in harm's way. We never, and I've got articles on our website that talk about that.
Or even I think it's all right. And I know you would agree with me, because we've both been through kind of a similar situation.
Yeah.
If you, as the adult child of the divorce, doesn't want to be around the drama, and you just can't handle it at Christmas, it's okay.
That's right.
And I think you need to be kind of released from that. It's actually okay to say, we're just going to have Christmas with our own family this year, or this year we've invited Mom, and next year we'll invite you.
Yeah.
But we just don't want the tension in our home, and we know that if the two of you are in the same room together, there's going to be tension. And sometimes it's palpable and sometimes it isn't, but we all know it's there kind of under the surface.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay for the adult child of that situation to make that call. That's kind of a boundary of its own, right?
It comes back to what we said earlier about emotional health. If it is not emotionally healthy for you to be in that environment, it is okay for you not to be in that environment. If you're married, your commitment is horizontally to your wife, to your kids, and you need to be emotionally healthy for that. And if you're coming out of the holiday just a wreck, because for me, as I had said, my father remarried twice, and the way it went for a number of years was that one would come in, we would make sure the next one they were gone before the next one came in, And then we make sure they were gone before the next one
So
came.
much work.
It was like a traffic controller at an airport, and I would get out of the holiday and we were all exhausted.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
That's not, this is about the birth of our Savior.
Mm-hmm.
And to come out of this season exhausted and hating this season and, can't wait for this to be over.
Mm-hmm.
We need some change because he offers us the peace that passes all understanding. And most of us, many of us, don't have that because of all this craziness. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's steps we can take that can make it better.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So talk really quickly to people who say, so my parents aren't divorced, but my spouse's family, there's divorce in that family. Maybe they haven't gone through that personally, but they want to be helpful.
Right.
And I know there are a lot of people listening to this right now who are they would be in that camp. My husband would fall into that camp. His parents didn't get divorced. Yeah. Right. How can they help if their parents aren't divorced?
In James, it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And as we had said earlier, so often we don't talk about this. Mm-hmm. And one of the best things you can be is an ear.
Yeah.
Listen to, encourage them. Man, really? That's what you had to go through? You went through this all the time? Tell me about that. And listen, I like to say at this time of year, you can always tell who has divorced parents. If you're at the gas station or at work or whatever, you just go, so what are you doing for Christmas? And if they start with, you probably have divorced parents. And there's a story.
And there's a story.
I also encourage you to go to our website, hopeforadp.com, and just listen to some of the podcasts because to get a feel for what your spouse or loved one or partner is going through, because you have no frame of reference, but you just listen to it, then you kind of go, wow, really? That's what you're experiencing? That's what they're going through? And then you have a better way to ask questions. And that's particularly important for people that are good. How you doing? I'm good.
Yeah.
You listen to the podcast.
I'm fine.
I'm fine. You listen to the if you're the spouse or partner, listen to some of it's only 10 or 15 minutes. Listen to the podcast, and then you've kind of got intelligent questions you can ask. I heard this thing that talked about being angry because you couldn't be at the same place, you couldn't do sports. I remember you mentioned that. Did you go through that? And now you've got them talking. And that's the best thing you can do is be a listener. Give them space. Because right now we're in a situation where, if you come up in a small group and they say, well, honor your father and your mother. And you go, I'm not going to do that. We would hit them with, well, it's the only, scripture with a promise. What do you mean you're not going to honor your family? And you go,
what about the promise? What about the promise?
Yeah, really, And instead if you go, you know what? My parents were married forever, and I can't even fathom what you're talking to, but I'd love to learn. You want to go out for a cup of coffee? I'd love to hear what you're going through.
Yeah.
That's how those who are, not connected to this could help.
Yeah. And I think the more we talk about it, and I love the word you use, just normalize. We're not normalizing divorce like it's just normal. What we're normalizing is once this happens to you, it's normal to be able to process it. We should be able to process out loud, should be able to have conversations about it. And I do think you're right, boy, the grieving that happens just by being able to not have it be bottled up inside of you, to be able to process with your spouse. And what we don't want to do is drag the next generation into it. And I can remember just begging the Lord when my first daughter, when I found out that she was going to have a baby, I've been just praying for her because I'd asked the Lord, my whole life, Lord, can I live to see the next generation set free? Yeah. From this terrible reality that is my parents can't stay married, and in my family, it was generational. I mean, generation after generation after generation. And so I came into that legacy of divorce. And I just heard the Lord say, you're going to live to see a next generation set free. And I think part of the way that we do that is by honoring what the Lord says in his word in our own marriages, right? Listen, I've learned to really listen for cues from my own husband. Like, oh, I need to pay attention. I need to spend more time with him. We need to go on a date instead of letting some of these roots that ended up, tearing up my parents' marriage apart. We listen for those things, and we learn how to do it different and how to do it better. In the generations to come. And there really is hope, right? Just because your parents were divorced and their parents maybe even before then doesn't mean that's the trajectory of your family, right? God can heal it and set you on a completely different path.
Yeah, well, that's my story. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, my dad was an adult child of divorce, from an adult child of divorce, from an adult child of divorce.
Yep.
And I praise God that he broke the cycle with me. You know, our key scripture is 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4, which talks about receiving God's comfort in our troubles so that we can help others who are having troubles to receive God's comfort so they can be comforted. And that's basically what I've done all these years.
So good. It's so good. There's healing, and you're such a hopeful person, especially this time of year. I think people need to hear that there is hope and things can actually be better next Christmas. And for those of you who are listening, who are just saying, boy, that's not me, it's all the relationships are in train wreck mode. One of the best things my husband and I ever did when all of the relationships in my family were in train wreck mode was we pulled away. We didn't, we weren't jerks about it, but we kind of backed out slowly so as not to disturb things, backed out as slowly as we could and really focused on our children and helping them love the Christmas season as much as we did and creating new traditions.
Yeah.
And we can do that.
Yeah, and being thankful for what we do have, because we have many, 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 many blessings.
Yes.
And sometimes we, because of that sadness or whatever, we lose sight of what we do have,
Yes.
which really is a long list for most of us.
Boy, it sure is. It sure is. Kent Darcie, if people are interested in finding out more about your ministry, listening to some of the podcasts that you've been talking about, and getting some of the materials you've written, how would they find you?
Best place to go is our website, hopeforadp.com. That's hope, the number 4, adp.com. And the number 4 stands for having healthy relationships with God, ourselves, our spouse, and others.
I love that. Kent Darcie, you've just been such an encouragement. I know a lot of people listening to this are breathing a bit of a sigh of relief right now. And I really appreciate your willingness to tackle what really is a difficult subject with such grace. And I hope you'll come back on again and we can continue the conversation.
We look forward to it. You all have a very Merry Christmas and celebrate the true meaning of this Christmas, the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Praise the Lord. It's so good. Merry Christmas, my friend. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode with my friend Kent Darcie. If you are struggling through this season in your life, I just want you to know we are praying for you here at the Heidi St. John podcast. And I really do hope that you'll check out Kent's website. He is the founder of Adults with Divorced Parents Ministries. We will link back to it in the show notes today. And just know that there is hope for you on the other side of the divorce of a parent. I hope you guys are considering joining me if you haven't signed up already for my women's ministry, Faith That Speaks. We're going to be taking you through God's Word in 2025, and I frankly cannot wait to see what the Lord does as we learn to pick up the weapon every single day and get into it, open it up, have it be a light to our path, and really understand more of the heart of God in 2025. You guys, it's life-changing to read the Bible. You can sign up right now so you can get all the materials that you'll need so you'll be ready to go on January 1. Again, you can sign up right now at faiththatspeaks.com. That's faiththatspeaks.com. We love you guys. Have a great day. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.